in nomine Patris, Filis, and Spiritus Sancto, requiescat in pace. Ha! It's me, back from the dead. Davide here, the impertinent collector. And in today's episode, I will take you down the path of the afterlife. What a journey you have when you follow my videos. And let's begin. Now, one of the bittersweet advantages of living overseas, especially as far away as in Australia, you get to miss a lot of celebrations, party and events. But you also get to miss a lot of funerals. Yes. And that gives my mom the ultimate power of communicating who is alive and who just died. And depending on how she felt about that person, somebody far away that I even haven't heard the name, I've been told he just died. And I might have been 102 years old. But an old school friend who died in a car crash, I might find out 6 months later by pure chance. Yes, that's the ultimate power of telling me who died and who is alive. And so normally when my conversation with my mom on the phone end up in a civil manner, and I say this one because it's not always the case. Sometimes she hung up on me, sometimes I hung up on her. Before I leave, in those occasions when the conversation has managed to pass all the hurdles, I'll ask, anybody died recently? And that's the way it is. And so sometimes you can have like something that is a relative that gifted you something many years ago. I had like a great uncle that I never met. And all of a sudden I'll find out through this distant cousin of my mom that he left us some silver coins, 10 each, 10 for me, and 10 for my sister. And they were already quite valuable, and he gifted that to me. Nobody knows where my 10 ended up. I asked a few years ago, and my mom said like, no, I have them somewhere. Better not to ask what happened. But the reality is that you hardly expect anything from people that you had a relationship, a friendship, or something like you had for quite some time. And sometime it could happen that there is just a reminder when you know that they died, that they've been nice to you in the past, and that leaves a sort of nice feeling. But sometime the afterlife has its way to produce gifts from the depth of his soil. And so, not that long ago, I met, whilst wandering around town, an old Chinese acquaintance of mine that I will call Mr. Lu. And I say, "How, Mr. Lu, how are you?" And he said, "Oh, I'm fine, but my older sister recently died, and I have to fly to Malaysia, to KL, and do the eulogy. Oh, I'd say like, oh, I'm sorry. And that was the conversation. And I say like, oh, let's have a coffee. We should meet sometime and get a cup of coffee together. And so this distinguished Chinese gentleman, I happened 10 days later to have a coffee with him. And with my great surprise, he said to me, oh, I brought something for you. Oh, I say like, Mr. Lu. He's like, how nice, Yes, I say like, I have a gift. It's a bit of a special gift. I say like, yes, what is it? Is it something that belonged to my departed sister? And I want you to have it as a gift from me, as she would have liked to give it to you as a gift had she met you. How interesting. I was touched by the thought that this Mr. Lu could trust me with a precious object that used to belong to the departed sister, Miss Ching. And little did I know that this object that I received was a game, but not any game as fate will do. Is a game that opens up a universe that has to do with how we play the game of life. This is the gift from the departed Miss Ching, who I never had the pleasure to meet and who never had the privilege to thank for the gift. This is the game of Go, the oldest Chinese board game, one of the oldest games ever invented. And if you are not familiar with Go, like I've always known about the game itself, but I had to go and learn the rules, because Mr. Lu said, next time I come to see you at your place, and you will grant me the favor of playing a game of Go on my older sister Ching. And of course, I was more than happy to oblige. And so what did I learn? Well, I have to start with the rules. I have to start with the history of the game. The game is, the way we know it, of course, is very popular across all of Asia, China, and particularly Japan. The first reference that we have about the game of Go, or how it was traditionally known, Wing Chi, is from a text of an historian from China of the 5th century BC. 2,500 years ago, they were already writing treaty about how to play the game. And the game, like all board games, is a strategic game. And for a chess player like me, I was immediately fascinated. But as I learned the basic rules in anticipation of a game with Mr. Lu, I went deeper into this philosophy that is behind the whole game of Wing Chun. And let me tell you something. It is said that the game of Wing Chun, of the game of Go, is the game of life. And therefore, it is important that you learn the basic, you learn the fundamentals before you start to play in a more fanciful way. The game of Go is in fact a slow game. It represents the marathon of life, not the sprint of your youth. And so, with the fundamentals comes patience. And with patience comes the developing of a life strategy that will take you through the whole game of Go, but as you play against an opponent, your whole life strategy will have to adjust, and you will have to acquire the necessary mental flexibility to adapt on the basis of what your opponent is doing. Yes, because the game of Go has a massive board, unlike the play of the game of chess. And so having a big board, it means that for quite some time you can play the game by yourself on one corner, one quadrant of the board, once your opponent might do exactly the same. And it's only when territory started to become scarce that you might face your opponent. But you might also find an opponent that is aggressive and whose strategy is the one of disrupting your strategy. And so whatever you were thinking in isolation is now gone. You have to move accordingly to what your opponent gives you. And of course, your opponent is no other than life itself, the event that presents themselves. And so, the lesson that comes with this game are extraordinary. Because in the game of chess, with whom I have some familiarity, some might even say I'm a good player, I let you decide if we ever get the chance to play chess. Every piece has a different weight. Every piece moves differently. And then of course the queen is the most important piece and is the most powerful. The king is the weakest piece, and all the pieces are there to protect the king while trapping the kings of your opponent. But not in Go. In Go and in Wing Chun, every stone has equal weight. And so the way you play building a connection of stones. And the longer the connection, the wider the connection, the more extended is your connection, the more territory you capture, or if you want, the more territory you deny your opponent. And that is the reason why you might not realize that as you are placing the stone on the board, your opponent is already playing an aggressive game, unbeknown to you, because he's a better player and he follows his own strategy. And so it's a game that requires repetition to understand the pattern. And the patterns or the possibility within Go are infinitely higher than the pattern of the possibility that you have in traditional chess. What are the lessons you learn? You have to learn to let go, because you might come to a point, and it regularly happens, that you can no longer defend a portion of your territory. And so you can then try to be in denial and move all the other stones to trying to fortify a wall that has already been breached by your enemy, or you might accept the loss and learn to move on. And that is why Go is such an extraordinary game, and I wish I could tell you more. But as I'm waiting for Mr. Lu to come and visit for the promised game, I feel at a disadvantage, because instead of learning the rules, I'm being captured by the whole philosophy of the game. But ultimately, one of the things that I learned whilst reading, the key of Go and Wing Chun is that you cannot master the rules, the strategy, the techniques, the moves by studying and analyzing. You can only learn by playing. Is it not that what life is all about? Thank you, thank you, thank you, Miss Ching. I wish you a happy journey in the afterlife. And maybe one day, if we get to meet again, or meet for the first time, as I wouldn't be able to recognize you, and you wouldn't be able to recognize me, you might see me wandering across the afterlife with this very board game. And you might approach me and ask me, where did you get that particular version of Wing Chun? Because I had one exactly the same. Oh, mystical, impertinent collector, taking you to the afterlife and back. And in the meantime, let's play the game.